The Quiet Place movies have a hell of a premise, until you think about the monsters for even a second. There are some common criticisms, like why don't they try to endlessly attack themselves from the loud noises they constantly make, but that one is understandable. They know what sounds they make and which sounds they don't, while other issues about them are far more glaring. They can't swim and are hypersensitive to sound. Well, why then didn't the army rig some speakers on the boat and watch the fuckers drown? They even get knocked out by high-pitched noises. Honestly, it's a similar situation to The Walking Dead. How in the hell do slow-walking corpses manage to topple all of civilization? But I'd honestly still argue that those issues are fine, because even with those flaws, the world created is usually pretty good, or lends itself well to character-centric stories, from which we get most of the Walking Dead show, Telltale's Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, or in the case of A Quiet Place, the movies, and the new game that has come out. Before we continue, if you haven't, make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. We are very close to 200 subs. Now, A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead is a good game. I am going to be pretty harsh on it, but I did enjoy my time with it. A Quiet Place, the game, was developed by Stormmind Games. It is their fourth game in their portfolio so far, and I would say that it's the game that brought this team into the mainstream, as their last game on Steam has a total of 164 reviews compared to A Quiet Place's 780 reviews, which still isn't much, but the difference in marketing for this game is still wide enough that you have almost definitely heard of this game. Now, A Quiet Place, by virtue of its setting, stands out massively from the rest of the horror game crowd. While keeping track of sound is common in stealth games, Stormmind Games took that angle and fucking ran with it. You can't step on leaves, you can't step on puddles, you should avoid tall grass, and you have to watch out for how fast you walk. There's also a sprint button, but honestly, it feels like the developer simply added that as a troll for players. It is an almost guaranteed fail. And there are more mechanics, one of them taken directly from the movies, that help further sound as the main mechanic and issue. For example, sand. You'll find, for some reason, sandbags scattered about to help you walk quietly. And while the rest of the mechanics in this game exist somewhere else, they help make a far more unique experience here. You've even got optional microphone usage, meaning if you want, any sound you make in the real world is picked up by the game and by the monsters. Now, this all sounds great, and for the most part, it is. If the game was this good in other important areas. Starting from the least important, the story, which isn't very good. They did something I didn't expect, which to talk about, I need to talk about spoilers, which was to kill off the entire cast besides the protagonist 2 hours into the game. Seriously. They established a few pretty interesting characters. You got Alex, the protagonist, who is an asthmatic pregnant woman, the two worst combinations in this world, and her father, Kenneth, who, after losing his wife, becomes utterly devoted to his daughter, Alex's boyfriend, Martin, Martin's mother, Laura, and Laura's henchman, Mark, who is a one-note creep. Everyone but Alex dies, literally at hour 2, which leaves the interesting and somewhat likable Alex no one to interact with for most of the game. This sort of lack of interaction is also felt in the plot itself, as Alex's goal is to find safety, an okay setting, but the game fails to give you the impression that this goal needs to be done now. Safety isn't going to leave forever or get stolen. The whole plot is about traveling to the coast to find a boat and go to safety. That's a good idea for a game. The only problem is the complete lack of pressure points. The game, despite mentioning raiders constantly, never says that there is a hostile group traveling to the same place to take the boat, or the National Guard performing an evacuation. This problem is hardly unique to this game. One of my favorite games, Metro Exodus, has a similar problem, as the only thing that game has you do is basically travel across the country looking for a new home. But while the lack of pressure points made Exodus feel more like an odyssey or a more relaxed experience, when in the trains at least, Quiet Place does not feel more relaxed. Nor should it. It's a survival horror game. And also, in regards to plot threads in the game, you have Alex coming to terms with her pregnancy and trying to get to the boat. That's it. And all of this combines into an unfortunately forgettable plot. Alex doesn't even find survivors to interact with. Laura and Mark don't push her beyond her capabilities, and her backstory is kept almost entirely vague. Worst yet is, the game has a model viewer, sort of like how Resident Evil Remake does, and there is at least a dozen characters there. And only 4 of them are in the game. Why? Why would I care to unlock these models that someone gave a name to beyond maybe the Death Angel and the actual underutilized cast? Still, I will say that the notes left behind by dead survivors are excellently well written, and sometimes give me genuine emotions. Also, while the gameplay is aiming to be a more sound-focused alien isolation, it often fails at that, mainly because of the Death Angels themselves. Their AI isn't very good. Oftentimes they get stuck, they teleport to you and auto-kill you, and given how wide these things are, sometimes just them jumping near a spot where you are can get you killed by sheer proximity. I've personally seen a Death Angel near the end of the game freeze in place and ignore me completely, which led to a both hilarious and tense scene of me running around doing what the game needs me to do, while the alien constantly detected me but couldn't come and kill me for whatever reason. It was just stuck. However, I do need to say that when everything is working as it should, as the developers intended to, it fucking works amazingly. The adrenaline and fear this game causes as you hear Alex's heartbeat rise and see a Death Angel less than a foot from you is incredible. So, at least on a visceral moment to moment, the game is mostly good. But I also want to say that the game has terrible optimization. I have a relatively good PC with an RTX 3050 Ti and Intel i7 with 16 gigabytes of RAM, but I couldn't break 20 frames for so much of the game, to the point I tried pushing the graphics so far down it practically made the game unplayable, and it still did not improve it. That is, until I found the answer. Just go into the game's launch settings on Steam and write this. Seriously, besides some areas in the endgame, my frames never dropped below 55 on the highest settings. There are some other more minor issues. The aliens or legs seem somewhat sticky and don't move in time with the rest of the body, and the second flashlight you get loses power even when turned off. There's also asthma, and you might disagree with me, but that is a mechanic of the game which I actually quite like. Mental stress and physical stress will increase a pretty basic meter, which, when it reaches its maximum capacity, causes an asthma attack that alerts a Death Angel and you die. So you need to keep it in check with hilariously single-use inhalers or by popping pills. While the mechanic itself is very gamey, you get a QTE to avoid the attack for Christ's sake, it works and complements the horror and tension quite nicely. A Quiet Place is a good game, one that unfortunately takes several missteps, mostly in how they handle their narrative and in the technical details. I'd recommend getting it on a discount if you haven't watched the movies or don't particularly care for them, and I would recommend it if you're a fan of this world. Thanks for watching.